So my name is Robbert Ottenhof. I am with ATS Global. I have been with ATS for over 11 years now, and I have done a lot of MES implementations and integrations over the past 10 plus years, which has always been a lot of fun, really. And I just wanted to share some insights about that with you guys today. And that's in part what this webinar is about. And then later on, there will be kind of the first half that I will be covering here today. And then we go into, let's say, some more details as well about a particular, let's say, MES solution and software suite for which we have one of our partners on the line here who will introduce himself later once we hand it over. That's Steve Cascio from ShopVue. So again, welcome and thanks a lot for your time here. We'll get started here, make it quick because I know your time is precious. So let's get running here. So that works well. Yeah, excellent. So here we go. So why actually is then MES so foundational to your Industry 4.0 strategy? It's a question that we get a lot. Especially within the capacity that ATS is working in. ATS Global as a company has different business activities, and one of them is consulting, right? So really help manufacturers around the globe with, let's say, early stage engagements and help them on their way through their digitalization journey, because that's at the end of the day what it really is. And I think most of you already understood that, so that's not something new that I'm bringing here. But let's take a look at, let's say, how that strategy could potentially look like, or I think how it is supposed to look like, more or less. Because Industry 4.0, yeah, that's always mentioned a lot. Oh, we would like to get into Industry 4.0. But yeah, what does it really mean, and how do we get there, right? So there, in terms of strategy, well, one thing is really important to understand first of all, which is the bottom line, and also on the bottom of this slide. Digital transformation, right? It's all about business transformation. So that is really important to keep that in mind. Yes, we will use a lot of, let's say, great tools that are out there nowadays for the digital transformation. But at the end of the day, we'll have to ask ourselves, obviously, what are we doing it for? Because we would like to transform our business to be really, let's say, state of the art, up to date, competitive, and be able to also respond to all the different trends that we see in the market right now, which are quite a few. I mean, there's quite a bit going on in the world, as we all know, and we'll have to be able to respond to that adequately. So as part of the strategy, as you can see on the left-hand side, it's actually 4 domains that we always need to look at. And from an ATS global point of view, those are the domains that our consultants will also work through when defining a, let's say, digital transformation strategy. It is, we'll start from the bottom up. So first of all, the processes, right? Manufacturing processes. What are the processes that are currently there that we're hopefully looking to, let's say, transform in a digital fashion, right? So is it a lot of paper still? How do the processes work? Is it all ad hoc, or is there planning and control? So looking at that maturity level, as you can see. Then we look at the structures, really important domain, looking at how it's represented from a corporate level, but also from a local plant level, right? Is that a good balance? But also looking at it from, let's say, the operations side as well as the IT side. Oftentimes, I mean, you might have heard about this before, these type of, let's say, strategies and these projects, it's considered to be an IT responsibility, but it really shouldn't be. I mean, IT is really important, and plays a key role as an enabler, but at the same time is at least equally important to have proper representation from the operations side, of course, because again, keep in mind, it's all about the business transformation. So that's the structure, that matrix structure. So local plans as well as corporate, and then operations as well as IT. That's kind of that the matrix structure that needs to be properly balanced. Probably the most important domain are the people, right? So the people is our workforce, and that actually do the job, right? And that make it work. And we have to make sure that our people are properly trained, right? And that they know what to do, they have the certifications, the correct responsibilities, the training, and that they stay up to date as well, especially if we get into the domain of technology and we start introducing new, let's say, technology, latest state of the art, as Steve will show you later on. This morning, for example, then it's really important that our people are trained up to work with that technology, right? And we get into that also later on, talking a bit about change management. So those are the four domains that are a really important part of our strategy. Okay. You still haven't answered the question why MES is foundational, but we'll get to that, right? So um, the other part of the strategy is actually in this overview here, where you can see basically two important things on the screen. So in the middle, we see the three bubbles, right? And we start with the keep/retain. So when we look at, let's say, a digital strategy, a digitalization strategy, we have to start with what are, let's say, the current processes, what is the as is, what are the best practices of the manufacturing companies. I mean, they're in business, right? So you're in business, which means that you're doing something well because you're able to, let's say, you're able to sustain basically. And so there's a set of best practices. And yeah, there is always room for improvement, of course, but there are also always best practices. That's the core, right? That's the keep, retain, that we will depart from. And then from there, we will look at, okay, now what do we need to change, right? What are the challenges that are out there, and what do we need to change? Which capabilities do we need to bring in order to further improve the operations? And once we've done that, then we actually have a layer where we can continue to innovate, right? So that is then that outer bubble, so we can, and then ultimately it all comes down, right? So continuous improvement, oftentimes mentioned, and that is also the cycle here. The manufacturing digitalization life cycle really follows a continuous improvement approach, which starts at the top with exploring, okay, what actually do we have right now, and then envision, so where do we want to get to from here? Then we start designing that. So we see, let's say, what kind of, let's say, processes, etc. we need. So we design, and then from the design, we see, okay, if these are, let's say, the challenges that we have, and we've designed these capabilities that are supposed to help us overcome these challenges and improve, then we select the right tools for that based on, again, business requirements. Then once we've selected that, then we're able to execute our first project. So we execute our first project, and obviously it's not that is just a project, but from there we have to move forward. Again, digitalization, it's a journey. We have to be able to support that long term. Because support that, and in the meantime, evaluate that, right? Because what's happened always, I was going to say a lot of times, but it's really always, we learn so much from each iteration. And in the evaluation stage, we basically go back to the table and say, okay, what do we have now? What are our new insights? And we start exploring all over again and envisioning what we can do from this stage, and then go around the circle again and again and again. So again, it's an iterative process, which is really important. Continuous improvement, right? Digital transformation at the end of the day is not a project with a fixed start and end date. It is really pretty much continuous. So that's really important for the strategy. If you take a step back real quick and look at the, let's say, the cross-industry needs and what manufacturers type of requirements they have, then at the end of the day, it does not matter too much in what type of industry you operate. There is a set of, let's say, core cross-industry needs and also challenges actually, that are a result of those, let's say, needs. And the first one here on is speed. So how quickly can we bring new products into the market? We talk about flexibility, right? How flexible can we be towards our customers? Because as we can see right now, I mean, customers, they want to have shorter lead times, so they want to have reduce their own inventory, so they order late, smaller batch sizes more often, right? How flexible? How can we respond to that? Quality, very important. We have to make sure that we produce top quality because that's how we actually can keep our customer, right? Because having a new customer is great, but now keep that customer, that's really important. So we have to have consistent quality, and also keeping in mind in the current day and age with the internet, I mean, it's quick to spread, let's say, a negative review. So we can't have that. So we really cannot afford, let's say, low quality. So quality, very important requirement, oftentimes a good challenge, and efficiency. Because yeah, with for example the supply chain disruptions that are going on right now, all the change in the labor market and the difficulty finding people, and let alone finding the right people to put in the workforce. We want to make sure that we're as efficient as possible, such that we can really um, yeah, do more with the same amount of resources, right? Whether that is human resources, whether that's our material or our machinery, we have to be more efficient. And then, bottom line, it's all underpinned by security, which we see almost every week in the news about some kind of security breach. Also, something that we cannot afford because in order to stay competitive, we have to keep our cards basically close to our chest, right? Internally, we have to make sure that we only give the right people the right authorization and the right access to all the data that we generate as part of our digital transformation strategy, really. So, very complex environment, as you can see, right? There's a lot of, let's say, keywords, or sometimes even called buzzwords that I already have dropped here that you can see on here, right? Everything nowadays has to be global. Everything has to be smart, right? Smart manufacturing. What is that really? The quality I talked about. We got supply chain disruptions. We got to be sustainable, of course. We want to be focusing on the long term, but then at the same time, people want to have personalized items. Oh, and by the way, compliance, what about that? It's only getting more and it's never getting less, right? Especially if we go and look at explore new markets, we get into, let's say, different regulatory compliance that we have to adhere to. So, I mean, as you can see, this is almost an exponential effect of complexity, and that also has to still be done in a cost-effective manner because we'll also still have to have, let's say, something on our bottom line because that's at the end of the day what we all do it for. So plenty of challenges in this very complex and ever increasing complexity in this environment, right? So now the real question then is, or the intermediate question, how do we turn this complexity actually into our competitive advantage, right? How can we actually make use of this complexity instead of just sitting there and thinking about, geez, this is going to be difficult, right? We can use that to our advantage. And how do we do that? At the end of the day, that is all around process capabilities, if you will. So that basically means that what we need to do is taking a look at, for example, this study from the Aberdeen Group, where we see several kind of key items that, let's say, best-in-class manufacturers that they focus on more so than average type or even the laggards, right? And there are three key things in there. The first one is standardization of processes. So getting that process domain that I mentioned earlier on into a higher maturity level across the enterprise in order to optimize manufacturing operations. Standardized measurement of the KPIs across the enterprise really is, especially if you're, let's say, a multi-site enterprise, or even if you just only have one single site, but you might have multiple lines that do the same thing on multiple machines. You want to be able to compare, right? So you compare apple to apples only if you have standardized KPIs. And then also, last but not least, the process. How do you respond, let's say, to unplanned or adverse events, right? So if you have that standardized way for that, then that will give you a lot of benefits, as you can see. And you can see that the best in class. So why are they best in class? Well, because they focus on these standardizations. Here's a quick overview definition of the maturity classes, right? So best in class, top 20. Then we talk about really, let's say, 94% success with new product introduction. 94%, that's high, right? They have an average OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, of 89%, which if that's your true OEE, right, then that is definitely on a high side, and as well as a 94% on time and complete shipment. So yeah, there is absolutely can be challenging, right? And then you also see that they are plus 6% in their operating margin based on our corporate plan. So to be best in class, let alone remain best in class, that will is definitely a challenge. So as you can see, they focus on perfect order and new product introduction. So if you look at those business movers, right, those best in class, so what do they actually do so well then? And how do they use, let's say, this complex environment and digital transformation to their advantage? Well, they have a direct relation between business metrics and operational metrics in order to be able to correlate. And rapid feedback of operational metrics to those who, as it said, make the difference. So that's primarily the people on the shop floor, right? They are your workforce, they run the process, but also the maintenance, the management that has to take decisions that have potential high impact. Now, how do we then support this? Now do we kind of get to the core of why MES is so foundational for your Industry 4.0, for your digital transformation strategy? Because this is supported by automatic capture of the data for those metrics. It can't be done manually, right? It can't not be paper-based. So this is where an MES comes into the game, and appropriate IT to provide reliable and consistent feedback, um, as frequent as necessary and as quick as necessary. So as you can see, the top performance, they have at least those characteristics. And then there's always the two things, right? Either we wanted to become a top performer, so then you might need significant improvement, and that is a challenge in itself. However, if you're already a top performer, then there is still a good challenge out there, because how do we make sure that we remain in that top performance, right? So it's not like now we can drop the ball or drop our guard. We have to stay on our feet. So that's really important here. How does an MES play a role? Well, it has a very central role in there, right? So oftentimes, and this is a very simple representation of the very well-known ISA 95 structure, right? So with a top level, level 4, your business systems. But what we see here is that without an MES, so let's think for a second that orange level 3 is not there, right? So we would lose immediately our product-oriented, let's say, focus. We would lose immediately, let's say, insight into the minutes and the hours resolution, and we would lose the insight into what happens in a certain area of the plant, or um, in the site wide, right? So it's a very important focus that the MES brings here, that why it's so foundational to work right in between the business systems there on level 4, as well as the shop floor automation. It's really just crucial at the end of the day. We have another way of looking at that, right? So this is a very, very simple or simplified overview, but again, on the top, right? So our business systems, that make sure that we can fulfill customer demands, right? So that we ship on time, etc. And on the left-hand side, the people that run our processes, whereas on the bottom we have, let's say, our machines or robots potentially, or equipment. Um, and so what's basically the oil there? What is keeping it all together? Again, a central role for an MES solution to um, instruct the people what to do, collect data from people through manual data entry, for example, if they do an headline check, also to instruct your equipment what to do and collect data from the equipment based on what's going on, and also being that orchestrator. So take information from the business layer to understand what kind of manufacturing to execute, as well as to report back to the business layer what all has been produced, and what's ready to be shipped to the customers to fulfill the demand that you have. So again, a very central role to um, support the three different main types of resources that we have in the plant, right? The materials that are managed in the business layer, ERP, from an inventory standpoint, or equipment, right? That's on the shop floor there on the bottom, as well as our people, right? Our labor force. So MES is core to manage and orchestrate all of that. A quick overview of the opportunities here that we have within MES is also, and that's the other point that we'll have to make here today, is that an MES is really a foundational, is a framework that we put in. And once that is in, right, then we actually start seeing benefits over time. And the value of these benefits also increase over time. Sure, in MES, when we put it in, then we can get rid of, let's say, some of the paperwork right away, right? So that's more like the short-term type of benefits that we have. But then once it starts collecting more and more data, and we'll be able to get insights and do trending, etc., you can see that over time we get more and more insight, we get additional benefits, and that's why an MES is so important to have as your foundation, being part of that Industry 4.0 digitalization strategy. Change management is very important in this. We already talked about that, so I'll be very quick so you can at least take a quick look at this picture on the right hand side. But that is something oftentimes is overlooked, but it's very, very important to also have that as part of your strategy. We want to bring in an MES as to play a foundational role, but we have to make sure that we align our people, processes, as well as our organization. All right, so that's really important because it's all about the maturity at the end of the day. Aligning that in the first instance, because sometimes not the maturity in all the domains is the same, so we'll have to align that, and then we go step by step in multiple projects. We raise the maturity level, right? And that is exactly that continuous improvement as I was speaking about earlier on. So I will go over this a bit quicker because I don't want to eat into Steve's time. However, one more quick look into the collaborative manufacturing model, which considers three axes. Let's say a horizontal axis, let's say left to right from the supplier to the customer. So that's the supply chain, right? Or value chain. Then we've got a life cycle domain, from the bottom left to the top right, all the way from design through, let's say, support after production. And then we have the enterprise domain from the business up, so your ERP environment, down to your production and your automation and your shop floor. So we see these three axes, right? These three domains. And what again do we see is the core of all that? Well, it's an MES that takes information from the ERP, from the PLM, and from a supply chain management system, and uses all that, correlates that, contextualizes that, and then orchestrates the production with that. So MES and also the wider space, right? MES being part of manufacturing operations management, MOM, is really at the center of all those different domains. And that is, again, why it's so foundational, because if we take that out, then, as I mentioned a minute ago, we will lose the central role, and that is so key. Okay. The functional hierarchy, I already touched on that. So I will move through that quickly. And here to wrap this portion up, last but not least, so what are we looking at without an MES at the factory floor? Well, everything will be on paper, of course, right? So, and then there is quality concerns. There is also pressure from, let's say, sales on the production. So what do we do? Well, let's add some more paper, right? And a paper batch record, yeah, that's just very difficult to maintain, and that is definitely not the type of foundation that we are looking for. We'll have to, again, here where the MES sits in the middle, where we have this that historical, or let's say the good old paper record, which granted provides a lot of flexibility, but at the same time it does not help us in the long term to um, do the historical logging and create the insights that we are really looking for and be able to enable the continuous improvement cycles. So that at the end of the day is what an MES is foundational for, to be that enabler um, within your digital transformation strategy, working towards Industry 4.0, right? You will need to change in order to improve, and you will need visibility for that. And then if we take back about the best-in-class manufacturers, right? So what do we focus on? Perfect order delivery, as well as new product introductions. What do we need to do? Standardize, right? And the MES is actually will deliver a cost reduction and is, as I already mentioned, a prerequisite for all this. So with that being said, I would like to hand it over to Steve Cascio from ShopVue to give you some good insight into a very particular tool.
All right, Robert, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys taking time. I know Robert's at a customer site today, so he was able to break and join us for the event. So Robert, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Give me one moment. May need your help, Tom, just to make sure we're showing the right screen. Can you see the slide deck?
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. So everybody, thank you very much. I know we've got about 20 minutes left, and I won't bore you with a lot of slides, but I do want to hit on a couple of key points. If you look at many of the industry analysts out there around Industry 4.0 and the industrial Internet of Things, the largest benefits are very tangible, right? It's about improving OEE, it's about improving labor efficiency, reducing machine downtime and scrap, getting a better understanding of what's happening in the hidden factory. Because these are things, if you don't have metrics, you don't have ways to report, that ultimately you're just not seeing, you're not realizing where those opportunities are. What I found pretty fascinating and actually a little surprising, only 28% of the companies that were surveyed by LNS Research considered themselves leaders in industrial transformation. That means there's a lot of opportunity, folks. It means there's a lot of opportunity to really hone in on the things that are maybe causing some problems in the plant and drive operational improvements throughout the organization. One customer of ours that I will highlight very heavily is Hutchinson Automotive. Bob Hansen has been with Hutchinson over 28 years. Their products are found in 1 in 5 1 in 5 vehicles around the world. So all the door sealing, the trunk sealings, etc. So Bob has truly transformed his organization from very manually driven processes to heavily automated and machine oriented. And he's done it through 3 key ways. One is, he's got some 3 key principles: be on time, be prepared, and talk with data. And ultimately, technology played a huge role in Bob's transformation. And he looked at Industry 4.0 as really a staged approach. How could he get value each step of the way and improve his operations? The first step is understanding what is happening. Connect and gather the information, sense and monitor, take that data, turn it into information, and really focus on your machines and your processes. The next step is why it's happening. Now that we know what is happening, start to understand why it's happening. Gather that information, gather that knowledge, identify patterns, and start to build analysis around those patterns so you can become more proactive and start to predict what will happen next, right? So being able to predict machine downtime, predict quality degradation, turn that knowledge into wisdom and allow that wisdom to help you predict and forecast what's going to happen next. He started so by doing more cognitive machine computing. So he's gathering more information from his machines and less information from his people. And what he found is the more machine-driven information he gathered, the better predictability he had in his business. And now that he can start to predict what will happen, really the next step, the nirvana, if you will, is autonomous action, allowing the machines and your operations to self-adjust and optimize, turning that reaction into pure power so you can forecast and really be proactive about transforming your business. And these are things that I want to give kudos to Bob. He's done a great job at his organization in North America, and we're excited now to expand that effort overseas into a number of plants over in Europe. So we talk about MES being sort of the foundation, if you will, for Industry 4.0. ShopVue MES is all about helping you, our customers, optimize the people that you've got in your production environment, the business processes that you have supporting those people, the orders themselves, and the machines, making sure that they're all working in sync in this depiction, just to show a nice streamlined manufacturing process. If we look at the platform, just to give you a visual, it's a very modular platform. It's, you sort of buy as you go, and it really allows you to mature into that staged approach that I mentioned earlier from Bob. So if you want to start with labor management, managing the activity on the plant floor, collecting data around time and attendance, feed your payroll system, great, we can certainly help you right there. If you want to go a little further to the right and look at the digital factory, get rid of those paper travelers, right? Have the opportunity to integrate with your machines and collect good information, give you full genealogy, so traceability from cradle to grave of raw material to finished product. And then really digital instructions helping spoon feed your operators step by step, making sure sign-offs are in place so that the production process is going seamlessly. From there, we really step into what I would refer to as the smart factory. So it's a suite of APIs that allow you to integrate with a variety of systems. Obviously, your ERP system is critical. PLM, PLC, very important. We also use the ShopVue Analytics platform to represent your production-oriented data in a production setting, but extract that data through our big data interface, put it into your data lake, use your BI platform, whether that's a Click or a Power BI or a Tableau, and really mash that data up and really get a good sense of how are we doing and where are we doing best. Again, identify the hidden factory. The sooner you do that, the better. I'll quickly just go over, we can't do any of this if we don't connect to your business systems, your other business systems that support it. So ERP is critical. We support all the major ERPs and many of the, I would say, lesser known ones. Your PLM systems, your PLCs, your HR systems. Again, productized connectors to these key systems helps us to provide you a sustainable solution so that ShopVue MES can do its job and it can play very, very well with these other business solutions that you have to support your business. We all have a who's chart, who we do business with. I won't spend a lot of time here, but I would say one thing, ShopVue is a product that's been around for over 30 years. Our company CAI Software has been around 42 years. We are large enough to support global customers, but small enough to be nimble and agile and make sure we deliver value in a very timely way. And delivering value at the end of the day is what is critical. So an MES or a MOM platform, you need to be able to provide ROI to support these projects. So the 6 key areas that you can find ROI and look for that low-hanging fruit. Decrease your cycle times, maximize the throughput so you can reduce scrap. By reducing scrap and maximizing throughput, you're going to drive quality trends higher. You're going to reduce your inventory costs. And ultimately, whether it's ITAR, 21 CFR Part 11, or other compliance standards that you have to adhere to, we're going to help you achieve those as well. A little bit about ShopVue itself. We're not going to go into a long product demo today, certainly, but I wanted to give you 3 snippets into ShopVue. The first really will come from the operator console. It's fast and friendly. It's easy for your operators to use. So when they log in, they see their work tabs. They know exactly where they are, right? They can work in multiple work centers. They see an activity list, a list of work, things that they need to do. The shaded row indicates finished activity, and the white row shows scheduled jobs. They can look at metrics, so we can easily understand how are they doing against their work standards. And we give them a detail panel to really look at, what are the step-by-step processes that have to happen, and a toolbar to really make it easy. Start the job, stop the job, move it to material review board, record a comment, pass it along. Again, nice and easy. We try to make this, we call it ATM smart. Next one is digital work instructions. I mentioned earlier, step-by-step instructions to walk them through a process. Ultimately, we can integrate with a number of different third-party tools, videos. You can bring in instructions. We've got customers using HoloLens technology to walk things through. But at the end of the day, it's providing your operators with step-by-step instructions, checkoffs, the materials they should use, inspections that they should follow through, and if approvals have to be gained, they can do that through this tool as well. Again, make it very, very easy. The next key is, and it really feeds into Industry 4.0, is all about direct machine interaction, the ability to connect directly to your PLCs and your other systems, whether that's through an Ethernet connection or a wireless connection. Bring that data into visibility, right? Capture the information, collect the information, and then start to analyze the information. Things like machine state, quantity information, other business processes, and feed your analytics so that you can get that dashboard look to understand, how are we doing? Where are our problems? Are we having machine issues? These are just, again, high level, just some areas that we want to focus on. One other area I'll just point out is our new ShopVue Control Center. So as we move to a progressive web app, it's really about giving your supervisors the opportunity to roam around the plant, use a tablet, use other devices so they can make changes on the fly. Things like reviewing an employee's day or assigning work, maybe looking at the schedule over a period of time. Giving your supervisors and your users a control center. Log in, they're going to see the apps within ShopVue that they have access to. So this makes it nice and easy, personalized for them as a user. And again, giving them very easy tools to visualize how are we doing in the plant and where should I focus my time and energy. Here's another good example of looking at an employee's day, where they're spending their time, the jobs that they've been assigned to, and where their run time is, indirect labor, lunchtime, break time, etc. Nice, easy views to take a look at. Another example of a shop activity for an operator being able to capture information, apply it to the job that they're working on. And ultimately, all of this has to feed a visualization tool. So within ShopVue, 3 years ago, we went out and we looked at the BI platform market, and we looked at a number of different solutions. We decided to partner with Qlik. Qlik helps as OEM'd our ShopVue Analytics capabilities, where we deliver out-of-the-box dashboards that are really focused on business metrics. We polled our customers, our customer advisory board, and ultimately we came up with 15 plus out-of-the-box dashboards that work as you install ShopVue, and you can configure them, tweak them, you can build your own dashboards as well. Things like department activity, how are we doing in a specific area? It could be by shift, it could be by day, it could be by trade, whatever granularity you'd like to apply to the particular area that you're measuring and monitoring. It could be things like, let's look at our employee activity, not just department, but that drill down a little further into the employee itself. It could be by machine state. We can get to that level of detail. It could be, a statistical process control chart that gives you trending analysis based upon algorithms and inputs, or it could be, a number of other things. So as I look at the clock and we wrap up here to give a few minutes for Q&A, I want to go back to that initial slide. Only 28% of the industrial companies classify themselves as leaders of industrial transformation. That means there is opportunity. Even if you're one of those 28%, that means there's other opportunities. So my ask for those of you that attended today, first off, thank you for joining us. Think about your business, think about your operations. Where can you find some quick wins that will return investment to the business, improve how you run your operations, and gather better information to support continuous improvement? Number two, assess the toolbox. What do you have for solutions today within your purview that can help you achieve these low-hanging fruit, these areas of opportunity? And number three, schedule some time with us. We're happy to walk you through a more detailed assessment or analysis of the ShopVue platform, of what our friends at ATS can deliver in terms of value to improve your operational efforts, and really help you become more successful in your own organization. So with that, Tom, I'm going to pass it back to you, but I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. We appreciate the opportunity to meet with you, and I know that there have been a few questions in the chat. Tom, if you want to maybe start there, we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, first one, how does ShopVue integrate with various ERP systems?
So good question. We get that one a lot. So as I mentioned earlier, there are probably a dozen ERP systems or so, the SAPs of the world, the Infors of the world, the Epicors of the world, and several others that we have productized integrations with, which means we have an API. We've worked with those systems enough that we know exactly the transactions that have to be called from that ERP and brought into ShopVue, and we know the communication paths back to that ERP for constant updates. For the ERP systems that perhaps we've integrated less and haven't productized an API for, we can either do so by working with your IT team and your ERP vendor, or we have a simple data exchange platform that allows us with our import and export tools to provide the same type of integration without the productized platform, if you will.
All right, and a similar vein, does ShopVue integrate with PLM PLCs?
We do. We are not a PLM system. We are an MES system. We dabble a little bit into quality, but we are truly a comprehensive MES. So similar to the ERPs, whether it's the PTCs of the world, the Siemens of the world, etc. We do integrate with those PLM systems. We can pull work instruction and a lot of content down from those systems. So we typically will have an API approach to those integrations. And in instances where we don't, we just use the import-export tool as well. But those are pretty much table stakes, right, for any MOM implementation.
Thanks very much. And one more here. I've got, is ShopVue suitable for any type of manufacturer?
I would say ShopVue is suitable for a number of discrete manufacturers. So if it's aerospace and defense, automotive OEM, metal fabrication, foundry, assembly, really, I would say the blue collar manufacturing. We do dabble a little bit in CPG and food and beverage as well, but really it's the industrial manufacturing, which is, I think, suits us very well. The product has been very, very successful with over 150 customers globally, and I know that ATS's consultancy practice, is very, very strong in that area as well.
Great, and I've just got one more here. How would we actually measure the maturity within the 4 domains of people, process, structure, and technology? That's going back to Robbert, I think.
Yes, let me take that real quick. So, and that is actually a good question, because we see those different maturity levels on there, but how do we actually classify that, right? So now there is actually a maturity model that is available through MESA, which is a not-for-profit organization that maybe most of the people on here are already familiar with. If not, I invite always everyone to take a look at mesa.org to see there is lots of information on there that is also very helpful, so very resourceful. And then this maturity model that will really give insight into with detailed questions for each of the domains. It's just to, do you comply with that? Yes, well then you will fall in this, let's say, level of maturity. So this is either an exercise that can be done by organizations, but oftentimes we get called in to support that, just to give more context and explanation on the different questions, because it's a lot within that maturity study. But yeah, it's all out there. Mesa.org. Take a look. I would highly recommend that.
Yeah, I would second that, Robert. They're a great organization. You get a lot of benchmarking, a lot of good insights what other companies are doing. Yeah, I would second that endorsement.
Okay, one more question that's just come in. Can you talk a bit about the underlying architecture of ShopVue? What are the high-level requirements for running it?
Sure. So ShopVue can be implemented in one of 2 ways. It can be an on-premise installation, thin client or thick client for the terminals out on the factory floor, a progressive web app for the supervisors, in a traditional on-premise environment. So you've got your database server, your app server, and then you've got your reporting server for the analytics platform. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is it can be implemented as a single tenant private cloud environment. We have many of our clients beginning to move in that direction, and we can provide that the application software as a service and the Azure platform as a service for full infrastructure. So again, on-premise or via cloud as a private tenant.
Great, thanks very much.
Hopefully that answers that question, but that can always lead to many more questions, and I'm happy to take that offline if the panelist or the attendee would like to ask more questions.
Great, well, that's all the questions we have for now. So thank you both, Robert and Steve. And if any of the attendees have any more questions about MES, digital transformation, ShopVue, or any other related subjects that have come up during this webinar, you can reach out to the team at ShopVue or ATS, and they'll certainly have some answers for you. So all that's left for me to say is to say thank you for attending and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.